How would you start your first business on a weekend? This is what Noah Kagan tries to teach us in his book, The $1 Million Weekend. This is a great book to read if you are an aspiring entrepreneur and are looking to start your first business and haven't yet, since it's going to give you a great step-by-step playbook on how to do just that. This book is broken down into 3 parts. We have part 1, start it, part 2, build it, and part 3, grow it. If you are watching this and you haven't started your business, it is likely that you have been thinking about starting a business for some time now. You just haven't taken action yet. You see, there's a myth that tends to happen among aspiring entrepreneurs, which is, I need the right idea. I cannot get started until I've found a great business idea. But what Noah talks about throughout the book is that you don't start a business by having the right idea first. You start a business by deciding to start a business. Then you find the process to come up with the right idea. And that is the core idea from the first chapter, which is literally called Just Fucking Start. Because you're never going to feel ready to start a business. The right moment may never come. So you just have to begin before you are ready. And just to bring home this idea, there's a great quote from Noah. Most people overthink first and then act later. Every successful entrepreneur acts first and figures it out later. Any analysis before action is purely speculation. You really do not understand something until you've done it. Rather than plan your way into the confidence to act, just start acting. And I feel like many new entrepreneurs can relate because there is this feeling of, I have this idea for this thing, but I don't know how to do it. And the reality is, you're not going to know how to do everything, especially at the beginning. And the fear of not knowing stops us from getting started. So what if instead we ask ourselves, what is the smallest step I can take right now? Even if you don't know what to do, you can probably find a small step that you can do to get started. The first part of the book focuses on the encouragement to get started, because for most aspiring entrepreneurs, a little bit of courage can make the difference between following one's dream and staying on the same path. So now that we have the courage to get started, how do we build this thing? This is where we move to the customer-first approach. A major difference between experienced entrepreneurs and beginner entrepreneurs is that the beginner entrepreneur focuses on having a great idea for a product first before starting a business. Experienced entrepreneurs start by focusing first on who the person they're going to serve is, and then how to serve them. Because it all boils down to this. A business solves a problem for someone willing to pay for that problem to be solved. And the problem that beginner entrepreneurs fall into is trying to build something without first verifying there is actually someone out there willing to pay for that thing. Here's a quote from Noah. When it comes to generating business ideas, customers come before the product or service, or even before the idea. To build a business, you need someone to sell it to. Can't tell you how many times someone has emailed me saying, "What do you think about this business idea?" My auto reply, "Have you asked what the customer thinks?" Essentially, when you want to start a business, the first step is to know who you are going to sell to. Ideally, this will be within your own area of influence. If you already have proximity to people you can serve, why go out and searching for those you have no influence with? For example, if you are a university student and you want to start a business, you may focus on who is around you, like other students, teachers, or future students and their parents. What problems do they have, and how can you solve their problems? The other thing to consider is, does this customer have money? It is much easier to build a business around those who already have money. Because even if someone really wants to buy your product, if they can't pay for it, you can't build a business. Let's go back to this student example. If you are in university at a young age, probably other students will not have very much money. So if the students don't have money, who does? Well, probably their parents. So what problems do the students' parents have? What about the university itself? There might be some problems you can help the university solve to tap into the money they have. Now that you've brainstormed who the person you're serving is going to be and found that they have money to pay, the next step is to brainstorm what problems they have that you can offer solutions for. Now, the easiest way to do this is to go and ask them. What are the things in their life that are really annoying? What are the things that they already pay for? What are the things that they are currently paying for but don't seem very good? And if you do this enough, you will come up with a long list of problems that people have. If you think about it, our whole society itself progresses because people discover a problem and try to find a way to solve it. Netflix started because the founder was tired of late fees on movie rentals, and the idea of Netflix was the solution to the problem. And there's a really good example here. There's the founder's first approach, and there's the customer first approach. Let's say that we have an idea for a dog walking app. How would you go about doing it? Here's the way most people would do it. 1. Spend hours at home thinking about the app and coming up with a clever name for it. 2. Spend $100 with their cousin to draw a cool logo. 3. Set up an LLC. 4. Watch YouTube videos about apps and programming and business and dogs. 5. Consider signing up for a developer bootcamp and quickly realize that coding is hard. 6. Buy the domain name for the cool website you're going to build. 7. Look into hiring a developer on Upwork and quickly realize it's incredibly expensive. Number 8. Give up again. Now notice how this is all about the founder, not really about the customer at all. Now let's take the same idea for a dog walking app and let's put it through the customer first perspective. 1. Call or text 3 people right now who have dogs and ask them to pay you to walk their dog. 2. Turns out none of these dog owners have problems walking their dog. You discover their real problem is finding dog sitters for when they're traveling. 3. Ask them when they will travel next and have them pay you a deposit to dog sit. 4. Collect the money. Jackpot. In the first example, which I think we can all relate to in some ways, in the founder-first approach, you go down a rabbit hole where you build something without verifying that people actually have a problem, and just as importantly, are willing to pay for it. So you can potentially spend your time and money building something that no one actually wants to buy. In the second example, you come up with an idea. Then you talk to people, and you see if the idea is actually good. Would they be willing to pay for it? You realize, no, they don't. And now you do something else because you realize they are willing to pay for this other thing. And most importantly, you ask for the first sale. You make your first dollar. There's no better confirmation that your idea is actually good than having people pay for it. Your first 3 customers are always the hardest. If you just aim to try to get your first 3 paying customers as soon as humanly possible, before you even try to build anything, then at least you have some kind of validation that the idea actually has potential to work. So this, for example, is an email that one of Noah's friends, Boris, used to start his business. Subject line: helping you help me with food. Body: hey friends, one thing I realized is that I am busy all the time and I don't have time to cook quality meals. I wanted to invite a few close friends to test a business idea with me. Consider yourself the lucky chosen few. Convenient and home-cooked meals. On February 9th, for $20, there will be a personal chef making us food and delivering it to you conveniently and deliciously. If this is something you're seriously interested in, please PayPal $20. Open to all and any feedback. Cheers, Boris. P.S. Please let me know if you have any dietary requirements. I promise the dinner will be delish. Now that you know that people actually want to buy what you have to offer, let's sell a lot more of it. You really only need 2 major components to grow your business. You need to build an audience, then you need to sell to that audience. If you want to grow your business, you must let people know what you offer, and social media is the best place to do it, because it's free and the returns of your efforts can be very high. For example, I started this YouTube channel with my laptop and a $60 microphone. Yet, I've reached over 25 million people over the last few years and made hundreds of thousands of dollars. But Noah talks about a very specific strategy to grow an audience on social media that he calls the content circle framework. And it goes like this. You first start with a very narrow audience, a niche within a niche. For example, if you take a look at Ali Abdaal, he started his YouTube channel by creating content of medical school exams for British people. This created a core audience that could relate to his content. As you move bigger, your content should overlap with what matters with your core audience, but it should also appeal to a broader audience. Ali started talking about studying and productivity. This was still creating content that his core audience would benefit from, but a broader audience would also find valuable. In the last circle, you go for the largest audience possible that is still related to your core. Ali's most watched videos are about his income, the latest technology he uses for productivity, and how he is investing. All circles should still include your core audience, but you keep expanding your circle of influence. And if you are a coach or a course creator or want to be, I've put together a whole guide on how to start, grow, and monetize a YouTube channel called the YouTube Monetization Blueprint. This has everything I wish I knew when I first started on YouTube. If you want a free copy, comment the word YouTube and I'll send it your way. So, which of these options do you think is the most valuable for your business? A 100-person email list. B. 1,000 YouTube subscribers. C. 10,000 Instagram followers. If you said A 100-person email list, you'd be correct. Email, as surprising as it may be, is the king and queen of communicating with your customers. Email is the most valuable asset because it allows you to own the distribution and the communication with your customers. And you are not at the mercy of other platforms' ever-changing algorithms. Noah even goes as far to say that he would give up his 120,000 Twitter followers, 750,000 YouTube subscribers, and 150 TikTok fans for his 100,000 email subscribers. This is because an email list is an asset that you own, unlike social media that can make one change to the algorithm and your audience can no longer find you. And as always, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.